Hey folks, this is a video tutorial on how to use Microsoft Forms to trigger an Outlook calendar invite to be sent to someone responding to your form. Currently, Microsoft has an updates event feature in Power Automate. Now, that feature works really well. However, there is an annoying limitation where every time someone submits a form, an update of the calendar invite gets sent to everyone who's already on the invite, which means if you're the first person responding to the form, you will receive an updated calendar invite every time someone submits the form. Now, Microsoft has yet to release an update to fix this, so in the meantime, you could definitely use this workaround, so let's jump into it. For this video, you are going to need 3 tools from the Office 365 suite. You are going to need Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Forms, and Microsoft Power Automate. If you're not familiar with Automate, it's the tool we're going to use to connect Microsoft Forms to Microsoft Outlook. So let's get started. First, let me show you the end result here. So I have a registration form that I created here. And basically in this registration form, the responder can choose from 4 different events. They can choose one, they can choose all 4, or they can choose a mix of all of them. And as soon as they hit submit, they will receive a calendar invite for each event that they selected. So before we get started with the process on creating this, the one thing to note is that all my events here have a unique identifier. So that's very important to keep these separated from not only each other, but then also anything else in your Outlook calendar. So I picked a serial number style of letters and then a series of ascending numbers here. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we want to do is create the calendar invites in our Outlook calendar. So this is my personal calendar. If you are looking to send the invite from a shared mailbox, you could do that as well. You would just need to open up the shared mailbox and make sure you have access to that mailbox and then send the calendar invite from there. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to create the first calendar invite for my first event. We will call this tutorial 001 test, and we'll do this from 9 to 9:30. Now here's the important part. We have to make sure that this invite is sent. So I will put my personal email address in here. So you as well can use your email address or one of your coworkers' email addresses, because the goal is we want it to sit in the sent folder. And the reason for this is Power Automate is going to be pulling this invite as it sends it to people from your sent folder or wherever you put it after it is sent. So I'll explain that in a little bit more. You can go ahead and put your team's info in if you'd like. And that's basically it. I'm going to go ahead and hit send. Okay, depending on how many events you have, I'll do this 3 more times. Let's say I have 3 events, so let me go ahead and do that. Now I've created 3 events that I've sent to my personal email address. So if I go to my sent folder now, you're going to notice that all 3 invites are here. And again, this is where Power Automate is going to be pulling these invites from and forwarding them to anyone who responds to your registration form. Now, I don't like to keep these invites in my sent folder because I usually delete the items there, and I don't want to accidentally delete the invites, because if I do that, the registration form will not work anymore. So what I do is I create a separate folder for event invites so I can use with Microsoft Forms. So let me go ahead and create a new folder, and I will call it Tutorial Registration Invites. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll move my invites into that folder so I don't accidentally delete them, and they're nice and safe in this folder. And that's it for what we're going to do in Microsoft Outlook. So now we're going to create a Microsoft form with a list of options that will connect directly to these invites. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, I'm here in Microsoft Forms. I'm going to go ahead and create a new form. And I'm going to call this, I keep it simple for myself. I keep the names similar to what we named the calendar invites. So let's call it tutorial video, registration form. And let's add a multiple choice question. So I want to go ahead and type in a question: which tutorial video event would you like to attend? Right now, this is set to only pick one event. So if you have a list of events and you want the responders to only attend one, you keep it like this. But if you want them to choose from multiple events, if they want to choose 1 or 2 or 3, go ahead and click on multiple answers, which I'll choose here. Now, if you remember, I created 3 calendar events. So I'll add this third option. Now, I would like to keep the options very similar to what I have in my calendar here. So tutorial 003-test, whatever it is you name these, I try to keep them similar to what's in the form just because it makes it simpler for me to connect them. But I could definitely see folks, to putting a similar title as the calendar invite here, but even next to it in parentheses, let's say restating the dates and times. But like I said, I like to keep it simple. So I will say, so this will be tutorial 001-test, tutorial 002-test, and lastly, tutorial 003-test. And it's as easy as that. My form is done. All right, time for the third step, which is using Power Automate to connect Microsoft Forms to Microsoft Outlook. Okay, so you want to go ahead and open up Power Automate, which looks like this. If you're new to Power Automate, I'll try to just keep this base step-by-step structure so you can follow along and get comfortable with Automate. So for step 1, click on Create on the left-hand side. All right, step 2, you want to click on Automated Cloud Flow. All right, this box is going to pop up. I will go ahead and skip this so we build it from scratch. All right, so let's start building the steps in the process flow. All right, so the first step is to trigger when a new response is submitted. So you can just type in when response in the search bar and it should pop up here when a new response is submitted in Microsoft Forms. So that's my first step. The form ID is the Microsoft form you just created. You want to go ahead and search for that form, whether it's a drop-down box. I'll just go ahead and type tutorial, because that's what I named it, tutorial video registration form. All right, so that's the first step in the flow. And then I am going to add another step. So this is saying search this form. So the next step is to get responses from that form. So I want to hit get response. And it's right down here, get response details. So I want to click on that step. Now the form ID is basically the same thing you did up here where you're choosing the form that you want Automate to look at. So again, this is my tutorial video form, registration form. And the response ID, you just want to add a dynamic content, which shows up here. So you want to go in the search box here, and it's actually already auto-populated response ID, but if you don't see that, just type in response ID here. And it's basically telling Automate to look at the ID of all the responses in the form. And that's it for this step. I do like to collapse these to keep them neat by clicking on the title. Okay, so the next step is to pull these sent invites out of Outlook. So let me go back to Automate here, and I'll click New Step. And I want to search for Get Email version 3, which is right here. So the default folder is looking in my inbox, but as you guys remember, I moved them to this tutorial registration invite folder. So I'll go back to Automate and I will click on this folder icon. It takes a second. I'll have to go through my folders list and look for the tutorial registration, which is right here. All right, so this is basically now telling Automate to look in this specific folder. So after you identify the proper folder you want Automate to look through, there's one more step in this action that you need to take, which is turn off this feature, fetch only unread messages, because those calendar invites have already been opened up and they've already been read. So you want to turn off this feature. So make sure that that's turned to no. All right, so you want to go ahead and collapse this step, and we're done with this one. Okay, at this point, we need to take a detour that's going to take us out of this flow a little bit, so just bear with us, but we need to grab some information from each of these calendar invites. So the first thing we need to do is save and test this flow. And the way we do that is I click the save button and then click the test button. Now, if you've never used Automate before, you're going to have to manually test this flow. So go ahead and click manual and hit test. Now, basically, this flow is waiting for someone to fill out the form so the flow can run. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the best way to do that is to click on the form. Now, again, this is the view of building the form, but I need to see the view of filling it out. So I'm going to go ahead and click share, copy the URL for filling out the actual form. I'm going to go to a new tab. I'm going to paste the form. And now, like I'm just a normal responder, I'm going to fill this out. I'm going to go ahead and click on all three of these, hit submit, and I can now X out of this and go back to my test run. So now it's going to test the flow and everything tested successfully. The reason we did this is I need the ID for each of these calendar invites, the email ID for each of these calendar invites, and the only way for me to get them is by running that flow. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to that. Okay, so now how do I get these IDs? I'm going to go ahead and expand the get emails function through the test. And I want to click on show raw outputs. Now I know this can be intimidating if you're not used to it, but I'll try to simplify it as much as I can. In each body section right here, there should be a subject line. So look for subject. And this subject is that tutorial 003 test. So that's for that calendar invite. The ID for this invite is up here. So what you want to do is take note of all of these. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up a Word document and take note of all these. So let me go ahead and move this over here so we can see. It's going to get a little messy. All right. So this one is for tutorial test 3. I'm going to go ahead and put that here. And then I'm going to copy the ID for tutorial test 3 without the quotation marks around it. So make sure those aren't around there. Go ahead and click that. All right, so that's the ID for tutorial test 3. Now I'm going to go back here. If you're, by the way, here's a tip. If you don't see all your stuff, there's a scroll bar at the bottom of these codes. All right, so we got tutorial test 3. Go down to the next one, which you're looking for the subject, and that's tutorial test 2. So I'm going to go back to my Word document, put that here, then go, and again, up here is where your ID is at for tutorial test 2. Copy that without the quotation marks. I'm going to click there, and we got one more, which is, you guessed it, tutorial test 1. So again, I'm going to click back here, scroll from the bottom here to the left. Where was I? Tutorial test 2, go down one more. Here is tutorial test 1. Word document, get the ID. All right, so I'm going to put this to the side here and go back to my flow. I'm going to collapse this. Now this is the test result view. I want to go back to edit, which is in the top right corner. Okay, now the next steps I want to add are conditional steps that say, hey, if the responder chooses event 1, 2, or 3, I want to forward the correlating email. So I'm going to go ahead and click next new step. I'm going to type in condition. And basically a condition, what it does is if the responder chooses a value that contains, the event title, if yes, send them the calendar invite. If no, do nothing. So basically it's a conditional trigger based on what the responder chooses. And we have to do a condition for each event in your registration form. So in my case, I'm going to do this 3 times because I have 3 events. Just so I don't get confused, I'm going to go ahead and rename this by clicking on the ellipsis, click rename. I'll keep the condition piece dash, I'll call this tutorial 001, that event. And then let me open it up. Now, I wanted to choose a value from the question in the form that asks which event they want to go to. And for this test, it's pretty simple because I only have 1 question in my form. So I'm going to click choose value, and I'm going to go into the dynamic content box. And because there's only 1 question, it should pop up right away, which was which event do you want to attend? So I'll type in which, and it's the question from my form. I don't want to say equal to, I want to say contains. So if the responder's answer to this question contains the title tutorial 001, then send them the calendar invite. Before I get to that, I want to go back to something we said earlier about these titles, which was, if you go back to the registration form, what we said in the beginning was to give each event a unique identifier, not just in the form, but also in the Outlook calendar. This way, Automate can find the proper one without getting confused, not only with each calendar invite, but everything else that's in the folder that you're keeping these calendar invites in. Now, again, if the responder in this question chooses the answer that contains this unique identifier, then we want them to forward the calendar invite by using the action. So click Add Action, Forward Email. And you want to choose version 2, which is right here. So message ID, right? What's the message ID for tutorial 001? And let me bring the Word document that we pasted all those codes on, or IDs on, I should say. So here's the tutorial 001. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Copy. I'll move this out of the way. Paste that message ID in. And then, okay, so now I found the email that I want, or the calendar invite that I want forwarded. Where do I want it forwarded to? And that is the responder, whoever's filling out the Microsoft form, their email address. So I'm going to go ahead and hit, oops, wrong box there. You want to go ahead and type in dynamic content, responder's email. Now, the responder's email, because this is for our internal company, everything is automatically generated for an internal form because it automatically captures the responder's email. If you're trying to have this happen externally, that goes into a deeper process where basically you have to add another question in the form asking the responder for their email. And in the to section, tying this back to that specific question, what is your email address? But I won't get into detail with that because this tutorial is meant for internal use. And that's basically it. So for this specific question, this form is done. It's basically saying in this question, which event you want to go to. If the responder answers contains this unique identifier for that first event, then send them the invite that correlates with this email ID to the responder's email. So you might have guessed it already. This is just for tutorial 001. We are going to do this 2 more times for the other 2 events. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'll do this fairly quickly since we've already done this once, but repetitiveness helps us learn. So I'll add a new step and I'll type in condition and choose value, dynamic content, and this is choosing the question in our form. Which tutorial video event would you like to attend? Contains. Now this is for putting in the unique identifier for our second event. I have tutorial 002. And what I wanted to do is forward the email if they choose it, or forward the calendar invite, which is forward email under if yes. Forward email version 2. Again, message ID. If I bring back my Word document, tutorial 002, here's the ID for it. And I want it to get sent to, under dynamic content, to the responder's email. And that's it. Oh, I forgot to rename this. So condition dash tutorial. I can't type today. Tutorial 002. And we are done here. All right, one more step. New step. Condition. Go dynamic content, find our question that we want it to look at, which tutorial contains. And this is our third event, which we labeled with tutorial 003. Cool. And add an action if they choose it, which is forward email. Version 2 here. All right. The ID for the message ID for tutorial 3 was this top one. Click on that. Add that here. And then to the 2, again, you want to go dynamic content and search responders email. And that's it. So if you have more events that you have to list up, I forgot to rename it. Let me do that. And now the flow is complete. It is saved. It is ready to run as soon as someone fills out that form. So I am going to go ahead and run a test to make sure everything's working. All right, looks like our test ran successfully. So let's go ahead and fill out the form. Okay, so again, this is where we built the form. I want to go ahead and get the link where we share it with submitters so I could test this out. I'm gonna go to the form. All right, so here's the form that the attendee will fill out. I will attend all 3, why not? And I'll hit submit and I will receive a calendar invite for all of these. Okay, and I already hear the invites coming in. So it ran successfully after I submitted the form. I have all the invites here. Now, one thing to note is this is forwarding the invite, and the subject line in the email of the invite says forward, but when I go to my calendar view, it's just listed normally. Now, other than that, there is one more final limitation, which is that if whoever created the invite goes in and updates, you know, the title, the date, the time, or any of the meeting information, this needs to be updated in the flow. And what I mean is, say I have 10 people currently on the invite, they already submitted the form, and now they're on this tutorial test 3. If I update the date of the event, all the people who are currently on the invite will receive the update. However, if any new people fill out the form for tutorial 3, they will be receiving the old invite, which basically has the old message ID. So what you'd have to do is grab the updated invite from your sent folder and replace it in the new folder you created where all the other invites are sitting. But for right now, that's it. These are the steps in Power Automate to take to have a Microsoft registration form trigger calendar invites to be sent to your responders based on their choices in the form. Thanks everyone for watching and have a great day.